In this video, I'm going to talk about the importance of having like some sort of system around how we deal with injuries. And oftentimes people will not like that coaches scaremonger that you're going to get injured, or that this exercise will lead to an injury, or doing this will lead to an injury. And that's absolutely right. You definitely shouldn't do that. We shouldn't build a fear around movement and tell anyone that doing one thing will lead to another outcome associated with injury. You know, if you do deadlifts, you're going to hurt your lower back. There's plenty of people that have done deadlifts for decades and have never hurt their lower back. So it's not necessarily something that we can correlate, and it's not really a good thing that coaches should do. That being said, if you participate in sport and then you do strength and conditioning and you do physical preparation to supplement that sport, which many people do, you are invariably going to run into issues over time, and you're invariably going to run into injuries over time. There's really important that in a sport like Jiu Jitsu, this is my opinion, because I think Jiu Jitsu is a sport that primarily, a lot of other combat sports are pretty similar, but Jiu Jitsu is a sport that primarily targets the limbs of your opponent, and the sport's quite grueling on the body as well because of the nature of the object of the sport. So as a result, I've just found that in this sport versus many others, there seems to be a lot more injuries, or people seem to be generally just more beat up than they are in other sports. As a consequence of that, I find that it's really helpful to have some sort of system of how you deal with the individual injuries that you have. Okay, so for example, I have a sciatic issue on my left-hand side that flares up sometimes, and I kind of have to compensate for that. And then I have a bit of a bicep tendon issue here on the left shoulder as well. And then there has to be something in place to deal with that. But these things do flare up from time to time, and it's important that I have some system, some way of reintroducing movement, some way of then promoting strength around that region if possible. There's some regions like joint specific that you can't necessarily strengthen like you can a muscle or a soft tissue, so that's really important. But it's important to still be able to have some way of addressing the local area in some way, because ultimately we want to get back to training. Like ultimately that's the goal. So having an injury management system is about saying, oh, my shoulder has flared up, this is the set of stretches I do, I eliminate these things from my training. After this 2 or 3 week mark, I feel good, then I start to reintroduce these things, I start to reintroduce certain things on the mats. That's really, really important, and I think not enough people kind of look at it that way. I oftentimes see that people won't go to physios and get injuries properly diagnosed. I think that's insane, and a lot of people in a lot of other sports would think that's insane also. Like, you should obviously go and figure out what's wrong and then have that dealt with in some sort of way that you can progress back to full return to play and return to contact and be able to train jiu-jitsu hard, because like that's ultimately the goal, isn't it? To train jiu-jitsu for a long time and to be able to train it at whatever intensity you feel you want to train it at, you know what I mean? So I think it's just really important, and just an idea to introduce to people, to have some management system around when your body fails you as a result of training hard, because it's not the fearmonger, like that is just a necessary and eventual outcome, not a necessary outcome, but an eventual outcome of training hard in the sport and then training hard in the gym. You will invariably run into issues doing that over time. So it's just about how we manage that over time, and I think that's really, really important. Okay, so if you enjoyed that, thanks for sticking around watching all the way to here. If you enjoyed that and you'll really like the Jiu Jitsu S&C Masterclass, it's been linked below, and it's a really good way of getting an introduction to some concepts from strength and conditioning and nutrition that are going to help you on the mats, make your life easier on the mats, and then they're delivered in a way that makes them actually digestible and implementable over time. So if you want that, links in the description, like the video, follow the channel, all the rest, and I'll see you on the next one.